Hello. Today we're going to pick up where we left off in chapter 16 of Judges with the story of Samson and Delilah. So after Samson's failed marriage and after his night with a prostitute, he has engaged several times with the Philistines and they see him as an enemy. He leads Israel for 20 years. So we're close to the end of his time as a judge when he happens to fall in love with a woman named Delilah. Now the rulers, the Philistine rulers, go to Delilah, who's a Philistine woman, and say to her, we want you to lure Samson into telling you the secret of his strength so that we can overpower him and subdue him. They're not interested in killing him outright. They want to subdue him and torture him. They promise her 1,100 shekels of silver apiece, which is quite a bit of money at that time. They were being very generous in their offer. So Delilah goes to Samson and says, tell me the secret of your strength. And he says, anyone who ties me with 7 fresh thongs will be able to subdue me. I'll be as weak as any other man. So she goes and tells the Philistine rulers. Then she ties him up with 7 thongs. There are men hidden in the room. She cries out, Samson, the Philistines are here. And he snaps all of these thongs. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah says to him, you've made a fool of me. Tell me the truth. And he says, if anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man. So Delilah takes new ropes, ties him up, and with men hidden in the room, she says, Samson, the Philistines are here. And he leaps up and snaps all the ropes as if they were threads. Delilah then says to Samson, you've been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied up. And he says, if you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric on the loom and tighten it with the pen, I'll become as weak as any other man. So while he was sleeping, Delilah takes the 7 braids of his hair and weaves them into the fabric and ties them with a pin. And she cries out, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He wakes from his sleep, pulls the pin from the loom and the fabric. And she says, how can you say to me, I love you, when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me. And she continues to nag him and pester him until he was tired to death. This is very reminiscent of when he was married and his new bride nagged and pestered him until he told the secret of his riddle. Samson again tells everything. He cannot refrain, cannot withstand the nagging. He tells her, no razor has ever been used on my head because I've been a Nazirite, set apart to God since birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines. Come back once more. He's told me everything. Then she lulls him to sleep with his head on her lap, and she shaves his head. They gave her the silver that they had promised. And with his strength gone, she calls out, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He wakes up and thinks to himself, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. His strength was all gone. The Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza. They bind him with bronze shackles, and they set him to grinding in the prison. But the hair upon his head began to grow again after it was shaved. So the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. And all of the people praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain. And while they were in high spirits, they called for Samson to bring him out so they could mock him. And they asked for him to entertain them. Now Samson is led out, again he's been blinded, and says, let me feel 2 pillars so I may lean against them. and they guide him over to two pillars that support the temple, and he says, praying to God, "O sovereign Lord, remember me. O God, please strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Then Samson reached toward the two central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on one, his left hand on the other. He presses apart and says, "Let me die with the Philistines." Pushes with all his might, and the temple came down with all the rulers and all the people. He died, all the people died, and thus he was killed. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he lived. And he was buried in the family cemetery. The lesson I take from this one is the irony how we can come to rely on our own strength and forget that everything we have and all the strength we have comes to us from God. Samson, a man of God, often forgot this, and in this critical case, when he was weakened by the loss of all of his hair after telling this woman, who he clearly should not have trusted after 3 times of her trying to take advantage of the information he'd given, on the 4th time, he really had given up all of his weakness, all of his relationship with God, which was represented in this unshaven hair. And God and his faithfulness to us, when we pray and call out to him, he will be there for us. He doesn't abandon us. And this certainly gives me strength on many occasions. Have a blessed week. Until the next time, bye.